friends. Today's Reddit story is called, "My Dad Had One Rule. We Weren't Supposed to Notice My Mom. I broke it, and now I understand why." Don't forget to rate my thread. Let's get started. I'll start from the beginning. I need to try and make sense of it all, for my own sake. For as long as I can remember, there was one unbreakable rule in my life. We never discussed it, never even spoke it out loud. It was a rule learned through punishing silence, through my father's sharp, warning glances, through the heavy, oppressive atmosphere. The rule was simple. We don't acknowledge her. She was my mother. She lived with us in the same house. She was as real and tangible as the dinner table we sat at every evening, or the stairs I climbed to my bedroom. But for my father, and therefore for me, she was meant to be a ghost we couldn't see. Every morning when I came down for breakfast, she was in the kitchen. She'd be standing at the stove in her floral apron, turning to smile at me. It was a sad smile, one that never reached her eyes. "Good morning, sweetheart," she'd say, her voice soft as rustling leaves. Every morning, I'd look past her, my eyes fixed on the coffee pot on the counter behind her. I'd get a bowl from the cupboard, pour my cereal, and sit at the table. My father would already be there, hidden behind his newspaper like a silent monument. She'd sigh quietly and place a third plate on the table between us. A plate of eggs or pancakes, always perfectly made, and always destined to go cold. We'd eat in silence. The only sounds were the scrape of forks against ceramic and the rustle of my father's paper. The third plate sat there, a testament to our cruelty, steaming, fragrant, an accusation. Mom would sit on a chair, hands folded in her lap, watching us eat with a mix of hope and despair. Sometimes she'd try to start a conversation. "Looks like it might rain today," she'd say, her voice trembling slightly. "You should take an umbrella to school." My father would just turn the page, the rustle of newsprint cutting sharply through the quiet room. I'd shovel another spoonful of cereal into my mouth, focusing on the crunch, the chewing, anything but the sound of her voice. After a while, she'd fall silent, the hope fading from her face, leaving behind that familiar, deeply ingrained sadness. Dinner was always the same. Mom would cook, filling the house with the smell of roast chicken or fresh-baked bread. She'd set the table for 3, laying out napkins and cutlery. Dad and I would sit down, and she'd serve us, placing food on our plates with graceful, practiced movements. Then she'd sit, fill her own plate, and try to engage us. "How was your day at work?" she'd ask my father. He wouldn't answer, concentrating all his attention on cutting his meat into neat little pieces. "And school? Did you have a test today?" she'd ask me. I'd stay silent, eyes glued to my plate, shoveling food into my mouth so I wouldn't have to speak. This game was suffocating, a constant, exhausting performance. Every day was a play where I pretended this woman, my own mother, didn't exist. I grew up in a house where 3 people lived, but I was raised in a world that acknowledged only 2. For years, I just accepted it. Children accept the strangest circumstances as normal because they don't know any different. The sky is blue, grass is green. We don't talk to Mom. It was a natural part of life. I learned to tune her out, to blur her figure at the edge of my vision. She became part of the background, like a painting you get so used to that you stop noticing it. But over time, as I entered my teens, that acceptance began to turn into something else. First doubt, then a deep, crushing guilt. I started watching her, subtly. I saw the fine lines of sadness etched around her eyes, saw the way her shoulders slumped when we ignored her, how she'd sometimes touch the back of my father's chair as she passed, a longing for a touch that never came. I saw a woman who was deeply, devastatingly alone, trapped inside her own home. My perception of my father changed too. The silent, stoic man I once saw as a protector began to look like a tyrant. His rule was strange, cruel, a calculated daily act of emotional abuse. What had she done to deserve this? Had she committed something unforgivable? Whatever it was, the punishment seemed monstrously disproportionate. It was a cold, quiet form of torture, and he'd made me his accomplice. The protest built slowly, like pressure behind my ribs. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie in bed and hear crying from their bedroom, a quiet, muffled sound, and it broke my heart. How could my father lie next to her every night, hear that, and do nothing? What kind of man was he? I began to see his actions as a grotesque form of control. He had erased her, silenced her voice, her presence, her very existence in the family she'd created. And I was helping him. Every silent breakfast, every ignored question, was another brick in the walls of her prison. The breaking point came last Tuesday. It was a horrible rainy day, the kind that makes the whole world feel grey and damp. I was sitting in the living room, trying to read, but the words seemed to blur on the page. She came in and stood by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. She didn't try to talk to me. She just stood there, looking out at a world she'd been erased from. She started humming, a simple, sad lullaby. The melody felt vaguely familiar, like a half-forgotten dream. A lump formed in my throat. I watched her reflection in the dark window glass, a nearly translucent figure against the wind-tossed trees outside. Her shoulders were shaking, almost imperceptibly. She was crying again, silently. Something inside me broke. Years of suppressed guilt, of silent rebellion, of love for this woman I wasn't allowed to see. It all came flooding out. All of it, this whole life, was monstrously wrong. I couldn't be part of it anymore. I waited. Waited until I heard my father's car pull out of the driveway for his weekly trip to the hardware store. It was a ritual for him, every Tuesday evening a couple of hours to himself. A new silence settled over the house. Not the imposed, artificial one, but a simple emptiness. But the house wasn't empty. She was still here. I found her in the kitchen. She was doing the dishes after dinner, her back to me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she'd hear it. My mouth was dry. I felt like I was about to break a law of nature, like the universe itself might crack if I spoke. I took a deep breath. "Mom?" The word felt foreign, heavy and clumsy. She froze. Her hands, submerged in the soapy water, went still. The silence that followed was deeper than any that had ever lived in this house. It stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then she turned slowly. Her face was a mask of disbelief. Her eyes, wide and glistening with tears, were fixed on me. She looked at me like she was seeing a miracle. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She just stared, her expression shifting from shock to a dawning, radiant joy so pure it hurt to see. You can see me," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. "Oh, my sweet boy, you can finally see me again." Her words confused me. They sounded strange, not quite fitting the moment. I took a step forward. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I've always seen you. I see you every day." Her brow furrowed in confusion, but the smile stayed on her face. She seemed unable to stop smiling. "But you never looked at me. You never spoke to me." "It was Dad," I said, the word tasting like poison. "He told me not to. It was his rule. I was a kid. I didn't know what to do. But I'm not a kid anymore. And this is wrong. What he's doing to you is wrong." Understanding dawned on her face, followed by a shadow of the old sadness. She took my hand. Her skin was surprisingly cold, firm, but her grip was strong, real. "Your father," she started, her voice trailing off. She shook her head. "He's been through a lot. He does what he thinks is best for us. But it's okay now. Everything's okay. This will be our secret, right? Just between us." I just nodded. My voice wouldn't work. The relief that washed over me was immense, like I'd been holding my breath my whole life and finally let it out. We stood there for a long time, just holding hands in the quiet kitchen. She told me how much she loved me, how she'd watched me grow up, how proud she was of the man I was becoming. She asked about school, my friends, my life. It was a torrent of questions born from years of unspoken love. We talked until we heard my father's car on the gravel driveway. Panic surged through me. She squeezed my hand one last time, a conspiratorial smile on her face. "Our secret," she whispered, then turned back to the sink and continued washing dishes like nothing had happened. Heart hammering, I fled the kitchen and made it to my room just as the front door opened. The rest of the evening passed in the usual suffocating silence, but this time it held something different. It held my secret. When Mom looked at me across the dinner table, there was a new light in her eyes, a shared knowledge. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had an ally in this house. Over the next few days, we continued our secret conversations. We'd talk whenever my father was out. I learned about her favorite books, the music she loved, the places she dreamed of visiting. She was vibrant, intelligent, funny. She was a whole person, a personality my father had tried to bury, and with every word, I felt like I was helping her climb out of the grave he'd dug for her. My anger at him grew daily. He was a monster. A quiet, calculating monster who had stolen my mother from me. I started thinking about what to do. Should I confront him, or just take her and leave? I had to protect her. I wouldn't let him hurt her anymore. And then came yesterday morning. When I woke up, the house was silent. Too silent. No smell of fresh coffee. No morning news on the radio. I lay in bed for a while, listening, straining for any sound, but the silence stretched on, unnatural, unsettling. I finally got up and went downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The coffee maker was cold. The newspaper was still on the porch. A chill of unease ran down my spine. I checked the whole first floor. No one. I went upstairs and knocked on their bedroom door. No answer. I pushed it open. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made. My father's side of the closet was open, his clothes hanging in their usual neat rows. Her side was empty. Panic began to set in. I checked the garage. The car was gone. My first thought
was that my father had left for work early, but he never did that without telling me. And where was Mom? Had he taken her somewhere? The thought filled me with dread. Had he found out about our secret? I spent the whole day in a state of escalating anxiety. I called my father's cell phone about 12 times. Every time, it went straight to voicemail. I called his office.
His secretary said he hadn't come in. There was no way to find out anything about Mom. She didn't have a cell phone. She didn't have friends. Her whole world was within the walls of our house. By evening, I was in despair. I paced the empty rooms, the silence pressing in on me. Had he hurt her? Had he taken her away to punish me? Dark thoughts began to swarm in my head. I had to do something. I had to find some clue, anything that might tell me where they were. My search led me back to their bedroom. Being in there, going through their things, felt like a violation, but I was desperate. I searched the drawers, under the bed, the closet. Nothing. It was just a room, unnaturally clean and featureless. Then I noticed something. On the floor of my father's closet, behind a row of shoes, sat a small wooden chest. I'd never seen it before. It wasn't locked. My hands were shaking as I lifted the lid. Inside were journals, a whole stack of them, identical black leather-bound notebooks, the kind my father used for work. I took the top one. My father's neat, precise handwriting filled every page. The first entry was dated over 15 years ago. I sat on the edge of their bed, catching a faint whiff of his cologne, and began to read. October 12th. It's been a year since the accident. The house feels so empty. My son has her eyes, and when I look at him, the pain is as sharp as if it happened yesterday. He's only 3, too young to understand. He just asks, "When is Mommy coming home?" How do you explain to a 3-year-old that she's never coming back? The police report called it an accident, a downed power line during a storm. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it doesn't feel like an accident. It feels like a theft. The world stole her from us. My blood ran cold. I read the entry a second time, then a third. An accident? She died? No, that's impossible. I talked to her just yesterday. I held her hand. This is a mistake. Someone else's diary, something else. But it was my father's handwriting, his room. I kept reading, a heavy knot of fear growing in my stomach. May 3rd, 2 years later. He did it again today. He was playing in the living room, and then he just stopped and pointed toward the kitchen. He said, "Mommy is making cookies." But the kitchen was empty. I told him Mommy was in heaven, like I always do, but he shook his head. "No, she's right there," he said. He described the yellow dress she was buried in. It sent chills down my spine. I tell myself he's only 5. He has an active imagination, that's all. May 28th. It's not his imagination. He talks to her every day now. I've started noticing strange things myself, catching movement out of the corner of my eye when he says she's passing by, smelling a faint trace of her perfume in a room he says she just left. This morning, I was standing in the hallway, and he was in his room chattering away. I asked who he was talking to. "Mommy," he said. "She's singing me a lullaby." And then I heard it myself, faintly through the door, but I recognized it. The lullaby. She used to sing it when our son was a baby. I nearly vomited. June 15th. Today, I confronted it. My son was sitting on the couch, talking to an empty space beside him.
I stood in the doorway and called out her name. I asked what she wanted. The air in the room grew heavy, cold. Pressure built in my ears. I felt malice, pure hatred, directed at me. And when I forced myself to look at the spot where my son was looking, I saw it for what it really was. Just for a second. Her figure, but her eyes. Her eyes were black voids, empty, ancient, and wrong. That's not my wife. My wife is gone. This is something else, an entity that stole her memory. I couldn't breathe. Nausea rose in my throat. This was madness. He was insane, grieving, insane. This couldn't be true. My knuckles were white where I gripped the journal. July 1st. I've tried everything. Priests, mediums, paranormal researchers. They either think I'm crazy, or they leave my house terrified, saying they can't help. One of them said it's a mimic spirit. It's drawn to grief, to my son's energy, and it seems like it will never leave. Even if we move, it will follow. He said the worst thing we can do is give it what it wants, attention. That's its food. If we feed it, it will grow stronger. It will consume my son. So, I have a plan. It's a terrible, cruel plan. It will make my son hate me. It will make me a monster in his eyes. But it's the only way I can think of to protect him. We have to starve the spirit. Pretend it doesn't exist. Cut off its food supply. We will not look at it. We will not speak to it. We will not acknowledge its existence. We will live in a house with a ghost and pretend we are alone. May God forgive me for what I'm about to do to my own child. The journal fell from my hands, landing silently on the carpet. The room spun. Every memory of my childhood, every silent dinner, every look from my father, it all reorganized in my mind, forming a new, horrifying picture. I fumbled for the last journal, the one from this year. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the pages. I found the entry from last week. Tuesday. Tonight he spoke to her. I knew it would happen eventually. I've seen him looking at her lately, seen the guilt in his eyes. He thinks I'm a monster. Maybe I am. I'd rather have him hate me and be safe. But he broke the rule. He opened the door. When I came home, the air in the house was different. Thicker, heavier. And she looked stronger, more tangible. The sadness in her eyes had been replaced by something else. Triumph. I have to end this. The man who told me about this spirit spoke of a ritual, a way to banish it. But it requires a sacrifice, a trade. He said it would likely kill me. But what kind of life have I lived anyway? A jailer in my own home, hated by my own son. If that's the price for his freedom, I'll pay it. He's talking to her again. I can hear them whispering in the kitchen. I love you, my boy. I hope one day you'll understand. I hope you'll forgive me. That was the last entry. He went to perform the ritual, to sacrifice himself, to save me from what he said was wearing my mother's shape. My blood turned to ice. I remembered taking her hand, how cold her skin had been. I remembered her words, "You can see me." I remembered the triumph in her eyes. And then I heard a sound. A soft, pleasant sound from downstairs. Humming. That strange melody she'd hummed by the window. A floorboard creaked downstairs. Then another. I sprang from the bed, instinct taking over, and locked the bedroom door. The click of the lock was deafening in the silence.
I backed away from the door, my heart pounding. My eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape that wasn't there. Her footsteps were on the stairs now, slow, measured. Not the light, near-silent steps I'd grown used to. These steps were heavy. They carried weight. She was stronger. I'd made her stronger. The humming stopped right outside the door. "Sweetheart?" It was my mother's voice, but it was different. Coated in a thick, saccharine sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Are you in there? I was so worried. I woke up and the house was empty." I pressed myself against the far wall, hand over my mouth to muffle my ragged breathing. "I talked to your father," she continued. Her voice was so clear, it sounded like she was standing right next to me. "He's very sorry, sweetheart, for everything. But he explained everything."
He knows he was wrong to keep us apart. I wanted to scream, "Liar! He's gone! You know he's gone!" He said he needs a few days to clear his head. The sweet voice continued. But he said we can talk. He wants us to finally spend some time together. Just you and me. Isn't that wonderful? Silence. I held my breath, praying she'd think I wasn't here, that she'd just go away. "I know you're in there, sweetie. I can feel you," she whispered tenderly. "Come on, open the door. I'll make you pancakes like I used to." She never made me pancakes. "Please, my son, don't push me away again, especially after you finally noticed me. Everything will be fine now. I'm here. I'll take care of you. We'll be a real family." The words hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Then came silence, stretching for a few agonizing heartbeats. Then a new sound, a soft metallic scrape. The doorknob began to jiggle, slowly at first, then faster. Click, rattle, click. I couldn't breathe. It was trying to get in. It wanted to reach me. I backed up until my shoulders hit the cold wall, staring with wide eyes at the trembling brass knob. The wood around the lock groaned under the pressure. My phone was in my pocket. Its weight suddenly felt like a lifeline. With clumsy, sweat-slicked fingers, I managed to pull it out on the third try. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button. What could I say? There's a woman in my house who looks and sounds like my mother, even though my father's journals say she died 15 years ago, and this thing is an evil spirit that craves attention. They'd send an ambulance with strong orderlies, not a police car with armed officers. The rattling stopped. A moment of silence. Deep, terrifying silence. Then a new sound, a soft, rhythmic scraping on the other side of the door, like long nails slowly, deliberately dragging across the wood grain. Scratch, scratch, over and over. A patient, possessive sound. That was it. I didn't care how crazy it sounded. I pressed the call button. A calm voice answered. 911, what's your emergency? I cupped my hand over the phone's speaker, my voice a choked, ragged whisper. There's a woman in my house. I'm knocked in my bedroom, upstairs. She's at the door. Can you describe her, sir? The dispatcher asked evenly. The scratching continued, a counterpoint to her professional calm. I can't. I haven't seen her. Just heard her. She's right outside my door. Please, hurry. A brief pause on the other end. Police are on their way, sir. Can you stay on the line? No, I whispered, eyes fixed on the door. I can't make noise. I hung up before she could object. The scratching stopped the instant the call ended, like it had heard. like it knew. The silence that followed was heavier than before. I could feel it waiting, knowing I'd called for help, that its time was limited, and maybe it was savoring it. I'm locked in this room. I've called the police, but I don't know if they can do anything. I don't know what they'll find when they get here. What if the spirit leaves? They'll find my father's journals, see the state I'm in, and think I've just lost my mind. But all I can do is wait. I'm writing this because I need someone to know the truth. I need you to know what really happened, in case they don't believe me. In case something happens to me before they arrive. Thank you for listening. There are many more stories from Reddit on the channel. Check it out if you like the genre. See you next time.